All right, let's get started. So welcome everybody to the one-on-one consult between the CZO Data National Project Team and the Reynolds Creek Investigator and Data Management teams. So the point of this one-on-one consult is to really get all three of our groups, the investigators at Reynolds Creek that are interested in data management, their data managers, and the CZO data team all together so that we can kind of get on the same page as to what are the unique attributes of your CZO's data management system and how we might be able to help you share your data according to the recommendations that we've provided, and basically to just improve communication between these three groups. We realize that communication has been is the area that we need to focus on for the remainder of this project, which ends at the end of March in 2016, so about 6 months away or so, maybe a little less than that now. As I think everyone knows, the CZO Data Project finally got real funding in March of 2013, and we focused, because there was a 2-year delay in funding from when the proposal was submitted, we reevaluated our efforts and realized that there were a number of opportunities to grasp based on other things that had been funded in that period, including the ODM2 project and EarthCube efforts. So we invested in the future and spent a lot of time on developing a very solid foundation. And about last winter or spring, we realized that now it's time to focus on communicating with all of you, and we want to do that through this one-on-one means. We realized that a lot of the communications happen by me showing up at PI meetings, and so the investigators get to know me, but don't get to fully realize that there's a deep team of people who are doing most of the work, and I'm just kind of the project manager. And likewise, when we have the Information Management Committee meetings, not all the investigators that are interested in your CZO show up. So this is an opportunity for us to all get to know each other too and describe unique needs. So in that spirit, I would like to go do a round of introductions. As you can see on the screen, I'll be highlighting names, and each of you can introduce yourselves and your role in managing or overseeing the data from Reynolds Creek CZO. Kitty, you want to start?
Hi, I'm Kathleen Losey, or Kitty. I'm the director for Reynolds Creek Critical Zone Observatory. I'm based here at Idaho State University, and you know, I've asked my team to join me today, so hopefully we can get some answers. That would be great.
Super. Sue.
Hi, my name is Sue Parsons, and I am a part-time, I guess. I work half for the EPSCoR Miles project and half for the Reynolds Creek CZO. And I work with Steve Van Vactor to manage Reynolds Creek data.
Mark?
I'm a soil scientist, co-PI on the Reynolds Creek CZO. And I'm with the Ag Research Service in Boise, and I work with the data, and I work with Steve Van Vactor here in Boise.
All right, Steve?
I'm Steven Van Vactor. I'm the ARS database manager. I've been doing Reynolds Creek database management for about 15 years now. I also do all the web development here.
All right. Thank you. So I'll start introducing our team. My name is Anthony Oftenkamp. I'm an organic geochemist by training with a background in oceanography and an interest in integrating data, and that's why I got asked to replace Mark Williams when he stepped down from the CZO Data Project in late 2012. And so my training is not cyber infrastructure, but I have contributed conceptually to the ODM2 information model and some of its derivatives, such as the ODM2 vocabularies that are now in the ODM2 vocabulary system, and most recently the YODA file specification. Jeff?
Okay.
Hi, good morning. Jeff Horsborough from Utah State University, Civil and Environmental Engineering. And seems like I go way back with some of these people from Reynolds Creek. I met Mark a long time ago. Steve I met in Boise a long time ago. Steve, I don't know if you remember. But my background is engineering, but I have focused a lot on hydrologic information systems, did a lot of work on the Quasi HIS, and designed the first version of the observations data model, and then also led the group working on ODM2 and the ODM2 vocabularies and a lot of the derivative products, and now the software ecosystem that's kind of emerging around ODM2.
Thank you. Emilio.
Remember you, Jeff. Oh, and by the way, Steve had to step out just quickly because there was a family emergency, but I don't know if he'll be back or not.
Okay.
Hi, this is Emilio Mayorga. I'm at the University of Washington in Seattle. I've been part of the ODM2 team as well, and within the CZOData project, my responsibility is on the data visualization portal. My background is in aquatic biogeochemistry, especially of rivers. But these days, I do mainly data information systems.
Great. David Lubinsky.
Yeah, David from University of Colorado at Boulder Institute of Arctic and Alpine Research. I'm a part-time CZO person. I'm the chief builder of criticalzone.org in collaboration that was designed with lots of other people. Built a few years ago, and then I got involved with you guys a little bit when we added the new CZOs a while back. And I also helped make the sort of data set section of the website, which was an addition that wasn't part of the original plan, in part response to what NSF's desires to have more visibility, more consistent visibility to data. That's it.
Megan?
So I think Kirsten is logging in right at this moment.
Super.
Usually she goes before me. So hi everyone, my name is Megan Carter. I work at the Interdisciplinary Earth Data Alliance, a data facility for solid earth science data. I can help you specifically with registering your samples with IGSN, which I think you guys have started to do. I'm aware of that, and I can help you get data DOIs for your geochemical data sets in the EarthChem library.
Hi,
All right.
Kirsten. I just came on.
Could you introduce yourself, Kirsten?
Oh, yeah, sure. Hi, so I'm Kirsten Lehnert. I'm the director of the Interdisciplinary Earth Data Alliance, a data facility that NSF funds. Among the systems that we operate is EarthChem and the System for Earth Sample Registration, both of which are closely affiliated with the Critical Zone Observatory's data project. EarthChem operates a repository for geochemical and petrological data and various synthesis databases as well, where we hope to get the Critical Zone Observatory geochemistry in. And CSA, the System for Earth Sample Registration, is providing unique identifiers for samples and a metadata catalog for the samples and sampling sites. So I guess we get to that later. I'm a petrologist, geochemist in background, but as I say, totally focused on the data management these days.
Super. So there are some people that are missing from our list, and I put in the notes file a link to basically the national people list with a data management tag. And so you can see that we have all of our contact information on the national website, so you can find us. But also what we realized is that in the last year, there was a lot of confusion, I think, amongst investigators and data managers over who was working on what, since we had a lot of pieces actually, before I move on to that, I'm going to just point out, you know, in the order listed here, that the people who are missing are Sarah Damiano. She works at the Stroud Center, and she's done quite a bit of help also on the same things I worked on, ODM2, vocabularies, and YODA. I guess the other major players are Ilya Zaslavsky, who's leading the group at the San Diego Supercomputing Center, who includes people like Chun Han and David Valentine. So in terms of responsibilities, we recently expanded the Submit CZOData page with its instructions and guidelines into a much more expanded list that actually ballooned out, not really ballooned, it really needed to expand out to 10 full pages. On each of these pages, we have contact people. So this is another way of us trying to let you know who's doing what and what aspect, how you can get help, basically, what aspects of what people are working on. So with that, one of the things that we wanted to do for the rest of the agenda is essentially go over this questionnaire. By the way, Kitty and Mark, have you been able to get access to this document? Looks like I see some of you listed here.
Yeah, I have.
Okay, that's super. Great. So you can type in notes and read it. We're going to have one of you present a 20-minute presentation of kind of your local data management approaches so that we get to know what you're all doing a bit better. It looks like you've already shared that so on our Google Drive, so we can you know, those of us on the call can open that and maybe see that on a separate monitor if we have to get questions. And then we're going to basically turn things around and kind of do a brief overview of the much more specific and elucidated guidelines and instructions for sharing data, and give you an opportunity to ask us questions to see if you all if it's clear what we've described. We realize that already you're the 7th CZO to do a consult, and we realize that some things need to be improved, and we've actually been making those improvements over the last month in our guidelines. And then in that conversation, we should come up with some kind of action items or take-home plans of how we might be able to help you improve your data sharing, and also so that's kind of both ways. You ask us, and we make suggestions. And then at the very end, we'd like to talk a little bit about future needs. Our project is over in March, end of March, and NSF has not really has been mostly focused on the national office and most recently on reviewing the individual CZOs, and we're really hoping to engage NSF to find out what the future is for the CZOData project. But we'd love to have your input as we enter those conversations. So so this would be, you know, what might be a good thing to do moving to the next phase of CZOData. What should be the primary focus? All right. Any questions on the agenda? I'm going to share screen sharing with whoever is going to present for Reynolds Creek. Who's that, Sue? Or Steve?
Sue's presenting the...
Yeah, it's probably me.
All right, Sue. I am giving you the WebEx presenter ball. You'll see the Quick Start tab on the upper left-hand corner of the WebEx window. Click on that, and there's a share screen button right in the middle. And when you click on that, we'll see your main screen if you're running Windows. So you can actually choose which screen. All right.
So can you guys see right now the Reynolds Creek?
Yep.
Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay.
So unfortunately, this happens with PowerPoint. We need you to mirror your displays because right now we're looking at your lower screen.
Okay.
So exit out of the slide. Just hit escape or something. Yep. And if you go to the top, there's a little slideshow button right at the top menu, lower down the list of words. You can hit mirror screen. You know how to do this?
It doesn't make it mirror screen.
So yeah, so you need to go see File, Home, Insert, keep on going all the way to Slideshow. Yep, there. And there's a button for Monitor, Mirror. I think it's probably that drop-down list.
Primary monitor. I don't have a mirror. I have automatic primary monitor and monitor 2.
All right, your version is slightly different than mine. There's a big mirror button right there. How about unclick use presenter view underneath monitor? So go back to where you were. Unclick use presenter view. There you go. Now try your slideshow. I think that will work.
All righty. Let's see, where are you, slideshow? How's that? My computer says you are sharing this monitor, and it just shows display 1. It doesn't say that it's showing my second monitor.
Yeah.
Is that not what's reflected in what you're seeing?
Well, right now, I haven't actually seen it go into the slideshow yet. Do you see the slideshow?
I do. Let's see. Let me drag this over. Nope. Is everyone else having the same problem?
Yeah, I was going to say you could go over and go to, say, use primary, maybe, monitor? Because you have 2 screens, right?
I do. I could just turn one off. Does that help? Can you guys see now?
If you unplug it, that works. Okay, actually that's working now. Right now it's working.
Okay. Okay, great. I just unplugged the other one. Okay.
Perfect.
Everybody can see?
If you full screen it, for those of you who are watching, remember the green bar at the top gives you access to participants, chat, mute, etc. All right, go ahead, Sue.
All right, thanks. So I work for Kitty Losi, and I work, actually I split my time between 2 big NSF-funded projects, the second of which is the CZO. And really, so when you see here on the slide saying that there's Stu Parsons, Idaho State University, a huge, huge component of making all this work is Stephen Van Vactor at the USDA. He really does handle the lion's share of the time series data that's been being collected for decades out at Reynolds Creek. And as he mentioned in his introduction, he's been at it for 15 years. So it's important to include him in this. And then also we have another collaborating university that's pretty close to the USDA. They're both based in Boise. And Luke Spady really is sort of the de facto data manager for the CZO there. We also work with U of I, but they don't really seem to be involved in data management. And that's University of Idaho. So just to give you a little bit of history, the Reynolds Creek Experimental Watershed has been managed by the USDA ARS Northwest Watershed Research Center since the 60s. There is a very large and very rich body of data that's been collected by the USDA, and it has a variety of different foci, weather, climate, hydrology, soil, vegetation, grazing, etc. And that data has been very capably managed by Stephen Van Vactor. Time series climatic data is harvested daily via telemetry, and that's actually hourly data. But since there's pretty limited connectivity as far as Wi-Fi, internet, 4G, stuff like that out there, it's all by radio. And all of this data is QA/QC'd and organized into SAS databases and served via an internal USDA FTP site, but that has very limited connectivity. So we also stood up a virtual directory in the cloud, which is for the kind of the public face for all that data. And that data is updated annually for public consumption, and quite often it's updated more frequently as it's needed internally by different researchers. Excuse me. So Steve rocks at his job. The USDA isn't going anywhere. There's really no need to interfere in their operations. A lot of this legacy historical data has been, being very capably managed for a very long time. So really, CZO resources and my time are best used to extend the USDA's operations at Reynolds Creek and to manage some new CZO-specific data sets that are coming in, a lot of which involve kind of soil biogeochemistry and ultimately a lot of water quality, water sampling data, things like that. So to extend sort of Reynolds Creek's kind of data management, I stood up a couple of different servers in Amazon's cloud. It seems like the best solution for us, given that we sort of needed a neutral space and bandwidth was sort of an issue at the USDA. So we have our Reynolds Creek CZO.org that has the virtual directories with all of the USDA ARS data on there, and CZO databases that are going to contain the time series, observation data, metadata, et cetera. Those CZO databases could ultimately be ODM2 databases, but I think maybe as we progress along a little, we can kind of flesh out why I have removed ODM2 from there. We also have our gis.reynoldscreekczo.org, and that contains our enterprise geodatabases and our GIS server, and that hosts vectors, rasters, and metadata. And then we have an informational wiki at info.reynoldscreekczo.org, and that has our informational wiki and data discovery interface. And then we have kind of a shared Google Drive, reynolds@isu.edu, that functions as the backup workspace for graduate students, postdocs, and researchers as needed. And it's also a collaborative environment for documents, preliminary data sets, manuscripts, literature, et cetera. And, alrighty. So our best working resource really is the wiki. It's found here. It has information, protocols, data, and currently Steve, myself, and a research specialist, Emma McCorkle, who isn't on the line, edit it for our different uses, and then everyone sees it. And let me see if I can actually go here and show you. So here's the home page here, and this is actually proving to be our most valuable sort of internal resource at present, because as you can see here, we have information about our meetings, team meeting notes. We have a calendar that shows when our weekly meetings are. We have, and this is a big part that actually would work in concert with an ODM2 deployment, is we have posted protocols, methods, templates, et cetera, for the different field methods, soil processing methods, et cetera. Here's information about our instrumentation. There's references. So naming conventions is a big deal, especially when we're working with the USDA, because they do have those long legacy data sets. We want to make sure that all the sites are named the same way. Soil taxonomy, et cetera. And then I have a link here for metadata and ODM2. And I have some slides that talks about this a little bit farther along. I'm not going to touch on it too much here, but what I mostly want students and postdocs to do right now is to fill out the metadata. And the templates themselves are creating a lot of problems. Actually, they're just very, very difficult to use, at least the ones that are the first pass at them. So I've really just culled out all of the data portion and just included this metadata section, and it no longer has the macros in it. And that is proving to be a lot easier to use. And later, once those are filled out, we can kind of proceed onto the data portion. So that's that. And then Steve has put together a lot of data discovery information here. So just on this main page, we have a link to our GIS server, our data server, and then the national project databases that David Levinsky put together. And then we have meteorology, and these all provide links here. He's done a really nice job of showing these kind of time series fluctuations. And these provide links to the data that's actually hosted on that cloud repository, which should be a nice fast connection. Let's go back. Is everybody seeing this okay on their screens?
Yeah, and I just extracted that, I got that URL to work, pasted it in our notes file, and then also shared it via chat so people can explore this website. Awesome, thanks. So yeah, we have these for precipitation, we have it for soil temperature, soil water, etc. So this has been a great resource.
Google map viewer too. Just are you going to show them the map too? Yeah.
I believe so. Let's see if I can get to that. Where are you, map? I think you're probably right here.
Site map, maybe?
I gotta find his map. Ah, here we go. Site map. And so, pending having a more useful sort of visualization portal, and I'll kind of get to that a little bit later too, we've sort of had to find a workaround for that because it doesn't really reflect any of our data. I submitted quite a bit of GIS data to, I think it was Emilio, quite a while ago, and I heard through the grapevine that there's been a number of upgrades that are either currently happening or going to happen in the future, and that's why none of that data has actually been posted up to the visualization portal, but just for our own internal purposes and for sort of, Kitty's reporting, we really needed to have something, and Steve put together this nice Google-driven interface where you can click on these different sites and get data associated with that different location and information. We have some other plans for visualizations as well. But moving back to PowerPoint, let's see. Okay. Uh-oh, are you guys seeing what I'm seeing?
Yep.
Okay, so back to the PowerPoint. So our best working resource internally right now is the wiki. So regarding those data discovery websites, the CMS does a really good job. I'm actually quite happy with the CMS. It works really well for what we're doing here as far as logging, or shall I say registering our existing data sets with sort of a centralized search engine. It would be great if there was a spatial search included in that, but right now it seems it works best really as a text search. The data visualization portal is not useful. So if we click here, I mean, like I mentioned, submitted layers ago, many months ago, but it's not included on this page. And also data managers cannot edit or directly contribute to it, which is sort of a problem. So it tends to be out of date. And so we have moved to the wiki and Steve's Google Earth Maps. So if you take a look here, that's all we have. And there's nothing, and that's been months and months and months, so there's just really nothing there. So let's see. Okay, and so we're also experimenting, my conversations with Steve is extending our visualizations. He has some internal ARS stuff that he wants to work on, but that's going to complement sort of using ArcGIS Online and our organizational account here at ISU. And this is really just a super, super coarse map, but these can be kind of optimized for embedding in websites, et cetera. And it's nice because you can click on different elements in this map. Like in this case, let's say I wanted to click on this met and precipitation layer. So it'll give you a pop-up and you can have a link in there to a data download. So we're thinking of going that direction as well as far as data discovery goes. And that's not what I want. All right. So I wanted to kind of touch base on ODM2 and YODA files. I did participate in that YODA file specification meeting back in February, and I think it's a great idea. I mean, ODM2 and YODA, I assume everybody here knows what those are, so I won't go into defining them because we've had a lot of conversations about this already. They're a great idea, and I think they could work. Reynolds Creek CZO is a good candidate for an ODM2 guinea pig, given this USDA kind of backbone and support. These long-term data sets are already being very capably managed, which really frees up my time to try to work with new CZO-specific data sets as an ODM2 YODA proof of concept. The ODM2 schema is heavy on metadata, which we need to collect anyway, and that's something that we kind of identified as perhaps a deficiency in what we were already doing out at Reynolds Creek, and it would allow us to contribute to the development of this CZO data sanction schema and data management practice. The problem is that it's not working, at least for us. The Excel templates are buggy, and I can show you an example of that in just a second. And I really have received really limited support. Right after that meeting, as soon as those templates became available, I was filling them out with grad students. I sent them to a number of people, and got, you know, very, very limited and not useful feedback. Yeah, and unfortunately. And after a couple weeks of this, kind of trying to follow up and trying to get like some sort of clarification, you know, it was sort of stuck on the back bleachers. And also, the resulting files aren't very human readable. So let me just kind of show you. I shared this with the, let's see, you might be able to just see it here. I'll bring it down here. So for example, when I made these YODA files, so this here is a YODA file, and this came from Nick Patton, who's been really helpful. He's a great guinea pig here at ISU. But when you go through, this is kind of what you end up with, only you would save it as like a YAML file. You end up with large sections of errors, and this is true for the YODA files that are posted up on the GitHub site as well, though I haven't spent as much time trying to pore over them. But this is sort of the thing you run into. Whenever you try to use this template, you get these large sections of error. And the data columns, too, themselves, this looks fairly straightforward for setting it up, but it's really not. So once you really kind of, you shouldn't let your researchers or your grad students or anyone else go rogue with this. They really need to have like guidance, because it's pretty complicated once you're trying to actually set it up. So with that experience, just given that there hasn't really been any kind of movement forward, I guess, since that initial template was made, I've kind of moved maybe a little bit away from using that as my primary go-to data management schema, only because it's so complicated. It's still a prototype. There's not a whole lot of development or support that I at least am aware of as far as pushing it forward. So I guess as it stands right now, especially since the first cohort of graduate students are now graduating and we need to have a good, workable, viable solution now, there's not really an incentive for me to stand up our own ODM2 database. I'd be more interested in shifting focus to creating like a metadata database with a web interface that's compatible when or if this sort of ODM2 YODA option becomes a good one. So for example, the other half of my duties is working for the MILES project, which is managing Idaho landscapes for ecosystem services, and that's an NSF EBSCOR project. And we have a really good team working up at the University of Idaho with the Northwestern Knowledge Network, which is the NKN. And she is working on Marissa Coronello, who is the main contact there. Let me just go and show you what this is. This is sort of, this is sort of what I had sort of envisioned for the YODA files and for YAML and creating those YAML files. She has this nice interface here, and what you do is you fill out all of your required information. This could correspond to the ODM2 core requirements or core elements, and then you can have these different drop-down lists for the controlled vocabulary. This is a pretty simple one. This is just for creating XML metadata, but it's essentially all the same. You provide a live link to where you want it to point to your actual data, and down here it'll create an ISO format, and eventually she's adding like an Esri XML as well and some other formats. So this is a prototype as well, because you can see it's on a development server. But I was sort of hoping to have something like this for YODA files, because that would actually make it like a more attractive way of doing things, and we wouldn't be setting up ODM2 databases, which are really complicated and nuanced. And you know, we have most data managers wear more than one hat. So having an option like this would definitely make it more attractive, and then you'd have your centralized ODM2 database that the people who are really in the know would be managing. So that's that. And let's see. So looking ahead, Boise State University and Luke Spady, they're working on creating these polished image services for their LiDAR, which we hope to register with the CMS. And so they will be a lot more user-friendly than the ones that are currently up there. I'm also looking to compile a comprehensive list of discipline-specific repositories, issuing DOIs, IGFNs, etc. I was really psyched to hear Megan Carter speak up. I'll definitely be contacting you because I think this is sort of the carrot you dangle for researchers to be compliant with data management and metadata practices. And I'd like to leverage the use of the wiki to provide links, templates, and guidance on submitting to these repositories. I'm going to be working with Steve at the USDA to enhance the wiki's functionality to provide a metadata database generating interface similar to what I just showed with the NKN. Steve and I have had some preliminary conversations about that, and I think that would probably work best for our particular uses, is to have just sort of a web-based interface for creating that metadata. And I was going to explore using ArcGIS Online as a way to create and share visualizations with data download capability, and one that I actually can maintain myself so that there's current data on it. And I'm in the process now of kind of doing like a graduate student data audit, where you kind of open a conversation with each individual grad student and walk them through filling out metadata templates, et cetera, just to make sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed before people graduate and move on. And I think that's all I have for the presentation. And yeah, I'm sure if Steve's returned or if Kitty or anyone else has anything to add.
Yeah, sorry, this is Kirsten. Thanks, this was a really great overview of what you're doing, very impressive. I just wanted to add, because you mentioned something about building a directory or catalog of repositories. There are actually two fairly large efforts underway at the moment. You might have heard about the re3data.org directory, which is sort of an international effort supported by the World Data Systems to list repositories. And then there has been, since last year, I've been involved with the Coalition for Publishing Data in the Earth and Space Sciences that has built a directory that is much more specific than the re3data and goes very much along the lines of what you said, that provides metadata such as, does this repository assign DOIs, what disciplinary data standards does it use, and which journals support this repository. It will, in the end, merge with re3data. That was just decided, but I just wanted to say, you know, it's great for you to compile it, but there are other efforts going on, and you know, you might want to wait until those have until you've checked them and see if you know you rather help entering information into those systems than building something additional.
No, that would be wonderful. If I could, I might email you later and ask for those names again.
The sites, or if Anthony wants to put in the Google document the sites for, Kirsten, if you have access to the Google doc, and you can basically give us access to where we should be looking.
Oh, I can do that. Yeah, I was actually just entering it into the chat of the GoToMeeting, but it's better to have it in the Google document. You're right. Okay, I'll do that.
I just added the high-level links somewhere in here. I'm not really sure if it's the right spot. So I guess I would like to kick off the discussion by saying that to follow up on what Kirsten said, that was a great presentation. You showed us a number of things that you're working on that I'm not sure many or any of us had awareness of, these DocuWikis and things like that. So there's a lot of discussion we can have about the work that you're doing, and then also you highlighted some of the miscommunications and frustrations that you've had in your team about what we've been doing, and I've acknowledged multiple times that we have not done a great job of communicating. There have been some communication gaps over the last year, and I really bear responsibility for that for a pile of reasons. But so that lack of communication is something, one, that we want to remedy, and second, I think we could probably do a lot of that remedying right today. There really are a lot of things that have been happening that we can discuss with you and describe to you. So I'm actually really looking forward to the discussion over the next hour and 15 minutes or so, because I think we can really get on track with a number of things. So are there any other questions or thoughts from our group? I mean, there were a number of topics. I mean, in terms of there's the work that you're all doing at Reynolds Creek with these Microsoft Cloud-based wikis and GIS servers, et cetera. You talked about the visualization system, which I'm sure Emilio wants to pipe in on. You talked about YODA files and YODA file templates, ODM2. So there's a number of things that we definitely would like to discuss. How about we start out with...
Anthony, can I just chime in too?
Yeah, please, Kitty.
I think, I think Sue did a great job of kind of highlighting, where we're going and what we've been doing. And I think, from my perspective, I mean, just in the last probably, week and a half, we really have been, we're really at a crossroads right now. And so I'm hoping that this conversation can help us, basically pick our path, because right now, we're really at this crossroads where we're like, okay, let's abandon, ODM2 and YODA files, and because they're not working, they're buggy, they're not, they can't provide what we need, for our graduate students. Ultimately, what we were really trying to do is implement this kind of vertically integrated system whereby, we could have the students, basically, load their data into these Excel templates, meta files, so that, ultimately there's not a huge amount of transfer over, and, problems. And so, I guess I just wanted to press upon that, we're really at a critical, quote unquote, crossroads, where we're really trying to pick, a path of how we proceed forward. And, right now we've been kind of basically, just really in the past week and a half, too, saying like, we've got to, abandon ship. ODM2 is just not going to perform the way, and the YAML spreadsheets. And so I'm hoping, I don't know, I'm hopeful that in this conversation you can maybe convince us that our efforts and our efforts for the past couple of years has not been in vain, that, this is still, the way we should go, or, if we should, or you should say, no, you should go down a different path. We're not ready for prime time. I mean, that to me is really kind of where I would describe where we are, which is, saying, okay, we need to look at Caesar templates and, get them into that format, rather than trying to adopt the YAML YODA files and stuff like that. So
yeah, sure. That seems like the timing is perfect then, because we'll have this conversation and hopefully it can help you make a decision. I'll just say that we are well aware of the parts of our project that aren't working well, and I'm really sorry, Sue, that you've been banging your head on those specimen Excel templates since May. I wasn't aware that we were very aware that you found a bunch of problems, and I think we responded to them sometime in May, but we didn't, and we've been kind of hunkering down and playing around, but also realizing, thinking about other alternatives, realizing that wasn't working, but also realizing there were some other things that we needed to do. Like the launch of the Excel templates was frankly way premature and probably not smart on our part. There was a whole pile of other things that needed to come into place, and we worked on that over the summer. But the communication with you was obviously poor if you had been continuing to try to use them all summer, because they really, you helped us realize very early on that the Excel template wasn't working. I'd like to back up a tiny bit and then go way general, but I just want to say ODM2 is not YODA file. And YODA file is not the Excel template. They are really different. So ODM2 is a conceptual model for how data can be integrated. It is a conceptual foundation for almost everything our teams are doing, including back at data repositories. IETA EarthChem rebuilt their new database system, including portions of CSAR and the IGSN system around ODM2. So it's like big and it's here to stay. But that conceptual model that's being used on that we'll be using and building in also to Quasi, HydroShare, and Quasi, the next version of the water data center. We're hoping we've heard lots of interest from Quasi about building that system around ODM2, and the CZO catalog is around ODM2. None of that requires you to have an ODM2 database running locally. So why don't we? And then the YODA file is a transport specification between ODM2 databases that we believe we could basically construct from a combination of forms that are either being used in Excel or in a web interface like you described. The folks at IETA are very interested in web interface, web forms to build YODA files. We see a path forward on that, and we played around with using Excel. The Excel template for time series is working reasonably well, but we realized that the VBA macros in Excel we were trying to overuse them. We were trying to use them to do too much. So we've fully abandoned using macros to do the full-blown validation of the YODA file that gets output by an Excel template. The concept of an Excel template we think can still work, but the Excel template is also separate from the YODA file. So I just kind of want to separate out all these components. Our entire vocabulary system that's now working that we want you and really expect you to adopt is built on ODM2. That doesn't require you to use ODM2 as a database locally either. It's just a vocabulary system that follows those concepts. So with that in mind, I kind of would like to do an overview of these submit data pages that we just launched. Hopefully it can be quick because there are different aspects of these that you have all looked at.
Anthony, I just wanted to make a very quick comment that's correcting a bit. We're not building a web interface that generates YODA files. We're building a web interface directly into the ODM2-based EarthChem database. So
okay, got it. Yeah. Right. Yeah, I misstated that a little bit. Sorry.
Database, and I mean the YODA files, if they can be exported then afterwards from the database, that's a different issue. But we're trying to build something that gets the data directly into the database.
Right. I'm sorry. Thank you for that clarification. Yeah, sometimes that was an oversimplification. but the intent is that the web forms or Excel templates should kind of get you to the same place through different means. I mean, the idea is to have granular data ingestion.
Yeah.
So I know that on the questionnaire, Sue wrote that she'd looked over the new web pages. I hope these have been helpful. We put quite a bit of energy in expanding our guidelines under this National CZO Data Program. I'll point out that on the Data tab, we kind of have three main sections about how to access CZO data. And we spent a lot of our time on building this data set listing approach, the data search portal, and the data visualization portal. In the beginning, but what we hadn't done a very good job of doing was describing how to submit data. So these things don't work all that well because the data submission isn't working so smoothly, and we realize that in hindsight. So we really are refocusing about helping you all submit data, and that's really 100% of what we will be doing, or 95% of what we want to do in the next 6 months. So we expanded this section on submitting data. And we describe on each one of these sections, we basically say that, you know, there are benefits to sharing data. The CZOs are expected to share data using the following approaches. And we provide each one of these, this is just a summary list of these 7 approaches that are expectations, and then 2 approaches which are completely optional but that we'll support you on. And I want to just go through each of these. So that's the summary list, but each one of these has a tab on the web page with contacts, descriptions, an individual description of the benefits of each of these, followed by detailed instructions on how to do them. We believe that what we've done really should help all the CZOs out. And so far, as we've kind of walked people through them, we've gotten a lot of positive feedback, but we also realize that there's some things still yet to continue improving on. Kitty, Mark, have you looked at any of these pages in the last month since we released them?
I have not.
Kitty?
No, I have not. I mean, I just got through my reverse site visit with NSF, so.
Right, yeah, so you've been quite busy. No worries. So these are here. I just want to point them out to you. And Sue and Stephen, have you looked through these?
I've looked superficially through them. They seem like they're pretty new.
They are very new. They're about a month old.
So yeah, once I became aware that they were there, which was really like a couple days ago, I did look through them, and I think they will be very helpful.
Okay. When they were released, I think we broadcasted, and I know we broadcasted to the IMC, so hopefully both of you are on that Google email list. And we'll try to use that more frequently to describe these updates that we're doing on the website. I'll point out that this one part of the website is very outdated, the CZO data system, and we're going to be redoing that soon. So the first expectation is to list data sets at criticalzone.org. We already heard from you that you like how it works and more or less understand it and get it, and it looks like you're already starting to do that. There are a couple main points that I think Kitty and Mark especially should understand, is that these data set listings for on the CZO website are just metadata descriptions for data files. I'll show you what some of yours are. So these data set listings, you've got 8 of them right now. Each of them has, for example, we'll just click on this first one. Each of them has metadata, which is very similar to the kind of metadata that you'd add anywhere else in any data repository. It describes the documents, but here the data documents can be anything. They can be CSV files, and I think in your case, they're pointers to your website. That works really well. So it basically says, you know, this is what the data are and where you can go find them. Once things are listed at within this data set listing, they get automatically exported to a GeoPortal server that is hosted at San Diego Supercomputing Center that's here. So this GeoPortal server, let's see, what were we just looking at? Geology, vegetation. So, you know, this GeoPortal server does faceted searches, right? So it has power searching, it can federate things. You guys are already using GeoPortal in at least one case, and so you're familiar with the capabilities here, but this is, so this is an ability to kind of combine these searches by clicking on major categories and typing free text words to essentially find the exact same data that is here. So this now, being in a GeoPortal, you know, can be searchable using XML, et cetera. So there's a lot of power here that we can build into the system as we move forward. I'm going to point out that because it's a GeoPortal, it can be federated with other GeoPortals. So we federate with Open Topography, so that we can actually do a search simultaneously using our system and their system. Because you have a geoportal set up, there may be the capabilities of federating the geoportals. The folks at San Diego, represented by Tom today, could maybe work with you on that. So that's kind of the first thing. Any file you want can be loaded up, and wherever it's located, you just point to it. We don't actually load up the file. We create the metadata for the file and then a pointer to the file. So the old CZChemDB Excel template could be filled out and used here, for example. Any CSV file can be pointed to here, and at some level you get you can get credit for it. You know, from the perspective of NSF, I should point out that yeah.
Just in terms of the data set, so, you know, like when you look, you know, people kind of looked at, oh, you have only 9 data sets loaded. I mean, should we be more strategic in the way we load these data sets? So if you go to the, you know, Reynolds Creek CZO, and if you go to, like, for example, our climate data.
Right. So you've got 8 data sets listed, but you're right. It's it's a humongous amount of data that's there.
Yeah. So
yeah, just so you should know, I've been trying to log the climate data with and the meteorology data with the CMS, but for a couple days it just hasn't done it. I don't know why.
I mean, I guess I'm just wondering, so like we have 9 data sets, but if you open up, so for example, precipitation, like that file, basically you're going to find, you know, a list. So if you go to the hourly, then you have like, you know, 32 sites, right, for each, you know, there are 32 precipitations or climate stations. And so, you know, it shows that we have like 9 data sets, but in fact it's like, you know, from 1960 to 2015, and it's also 32, or, you know, our 23 climate stations for, you know, precipitation gauges. So I guess I'm just wondering, like, you know, should we think about like parsing it out more? Would that be make it more discoverable? That's just a quick question.
Well, I think so. This idea of the data set is really supposed to be an aggregation. So the way that you've done it here is quite reasonable. It might make it easier to discover, you know, all the different gauging sites by including, for example, CZO field areas that, you know, the CZO field areas are hierarchical. So right now, it looks to me like you just have one major field area set up. You could create, you know, subunits or stations here and have them described or listed. The field areas are not designed to be individual gauging stations, but there's the capability, and I'm open to hearing from my colleagues about how to make those individual stations more discoverable on this data set. Sorry, I'm clicking around. I kind of lost where I was at. But
I think if there's different keywords or different variables being collected at the different sites, or anything that can differentiate them. If they are collecting all the same thing and kind of have the same terminology, they might be just best suited to be as part of one data set. But whatever makes each of the sites unique is how you differentiate.
Well, it's location.
Right.
They're all in different places.
Yeah, so maybe we need to do a better job of adding field areas and having them be associated within there on the field areas and stuff.
So if we have a network of gauges, it seems to me that would be one field area.
the field area might be, you know, the watershed upstream of the gauge. It's kind of up to you to how you describe that. I think that why don't we continue going on, because I want to talk about how IGSNs can be used to register sites. And you could have links at this page to all the sites and have pointers to the IGSNs, for example, right? You can have multiple files here. So you can, in addition to having these links to where the hourly and monthly precipitation data are, you could have, you know, a KML or a shape file of all the sites where the precip is happening. You could have pointers to maps. One of the things that I was just going to do, you know, is just quickly show. So this is
so we had the KML already, right? That she showed you, like that.
So this site, you know, the CMS, when you go behind it, when you have a login to it, is a web form, and there's a lot of space here to add information about, you know, about who is the creator of the data set. That could be used more. What are the discipline? You know, I guess you got discipline tag. You know, you can have this hierarchical list of field areas. One of the next tabs, if I'm not mistaken, there are variables, and I haven't done this super recently. These are publications, research groups. Where's the variables list? You can actually even add a KML to this particular system. You can add a KML directly into the system, and it will produce a tiny little map. And then I think the very last tab, if I'm not mistaken, oh, somehow I'm missing it. David, you want to guide me?
The first tab has the required content, which variables is included in required.
Okay, so I missed it.
Publish tab.
Here, this is one thing I was looking for, was award and grant number. You know, if you want to get credit, add the NSF award and grant number in here to every one of your data sets. That adds searchability. So somewhere here I missed the variables. Where is it?
The lower.
It's quite a bit lower. There we go. I mean, I guess you have some variables listed. So there are ways to kind of expand that, but I think we want to think about, for cross CZO comparisons, figuring out if we can get your data into your time series data into the whole Quasi water data center system for cross CZO searchability. So one way that we, you know, it's relatively straightforward for us to figure out how many data points are available. For example, Shale Hills has been doing a really good job of that with Quasi, and it's easy to search that they have like 70 million data points. You could probably blow them out of the water as soon as you got that service connected. You know, I mean, if it's really all about those kind of metrics, I'm hoping that NSF and others see a little deeper into it, but there are ways to kind of sell the data set a bit more, I think, using the system that's here.
So I think we are in there.
You are, okay.
As of a couple of years ago, or 3 years ago, I guess, we put everything in the ODM1.
Perfect.
So this is David Dubinsky. I just wanted to go back quick to Kitty's question about, you know, the number of data sets total. And I wanted to echo Anthony's point that, you know, the data sets, the concept at criticalzone.org is for those to be aggregates. But it is also to try to make the total listings that you have be something that's readily browsed. So the idea isn't to have 200 listings of data sets there, or else it doesn't get, you can't grok that very quickly. So having a smaller number of data sets, I don't see as a bad thing.
This is Emilio. I think that's an excellent issue that was raised. Well, what David mentioned or said just now is completely correct. I think the reality in systems like this, where several sites are presented together, is that there's a tendency often by others to use it as a comparative metric and to use simple numbers like that, like 10 data sets is less than or less data than 50 data sets. when reality, when there's wiggle room and ambiguity about, and choice really about how you lump your data sets, those numbers themselves are fairly meaningless. It's all about how data sets are, what they aggregate. Some people may choose to aggregate more finely and therefore have more data sets, while others may choose to aggregate more coarsely and therefore have fewer data sets. So I think it's an issue that we should talk about some more in the future to minimize misinterpretations. But again, like David and others have said, I don't see anything wrong whatsoever with the approach that Reynolds has taken. It's nice and clean.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really clean. I just, I mean, we got a little bit of, flack at one meeting because they're like, oh, Reynolds only has 9 data sets, you know, up there. And I was like, dude, if you look at data sets, like you actually see that there are 26 data sets in the, one data set, and there's, it's, from 1960 to 2014, and we're in the state, so it's like we're trying to, I mean, the ARS in particular, like Steve Van Vector, has been doing a fantastic job of really keeping the monitoring data up to speed and up to date and publishing it. So, I mean, I want to give him accolades, and I think it is neatly built, but I think there needs to be, there is a sense, I think from the PIs that, NSF is, using, trying to, have metrics of, and we need to actually, I think from the perspective, we created metrics of, how many times is the data actually downloaded. We need to be able to get back that information from, the CMS and, like how do we get that information, right?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of data downloads.
Yeah, that's something that is not within our present scope, is to build metrics, but it's something that we actually, it's one of the questions we've heard before, and it seems like an area that is worth pursuing with an additional round of funding.
Mm-hmm.
There's another bit of feedback I have to maybe help you all. That is that you showed us a number of really great systems that were hard to get to even when we had your PowerPoint presentation, because the URLs that you provided there were too high level, and on some of those sites there wasn't navigation. Like if we just go to Reynolds Creek CZO.org, it goes to some Amazon cloud thing that you can't navigate from. I would suggest really linking out of the CZO, the criticalzone.org's pages that we're looking at now, as much as possible to there. So this is a little bit of a link right here that went to something really early, but it's kind of outdated. It's this map right here, but you've got much better stuff now. I know that for some of the other data systems, like Boulder has something similar. Oh, am I looking at the wrong? So
Boulder is kind of hiding theirs on purpose, but I think Sierra links to their catalog as an example.
Yeah, so what I was going to show was that, here we go. So I don't know, David, how you did this, if this is a custom thing, but basically talk to David.
I can talk about that and set it up so there's more visibility to whatever is public within their wiki or whatever makes some sense.
Exactly. So talk to David about getting some big buttons up here, really high up and all over the place, to kind of go to these amazing resources that you just showed us that I had never actually seen before. There's room in here in the text that you can edit yourself. David could add some buttons here. And I think when we go to all data set listings, you could actually create an entry right here that would be like the super duper Reynolds Creek like data system, like local data system, and call it a featured data set. And when you click on it, it would basically be a description of the great system that you've built based on ARS and just pointers to it. And you could, that would be another thing. Kind of the high level, and you could call it a featured data set. I don't know. That would be another way to create some really clear links to your high-level organization. You could get really granular, right? So you could, for underneath this precipitation, right here you just have links to these huge number of files, but you could actually have a link to every individual file in addition to these high-level links. That would be possible too. If it seems like that would be, nice to go, more directly to these files. I'm not really sure that makes sense, but there are lots of possibilities there. Let's move on, but I think that your concerns and comments are well taken. So these data set listings can handle any kind of file. One of the files that it was designed to handle were CZO display files, but the YODA files, which we've heard a lot about, and I'm going to kind of jump over this a little bit, are designed as kind of the second version of a CZO display file. So we had CZO display file, which worked for time series data, and that file can be parsed into quasi-HIS system. That's what it was designed for. Most of the original CZOs didn't have quasi databases, didn't have nice systems like you, and it was our way of getting their data integrated. They were supposed to be QA/QC data sets, kind of like final data sets. You could do the same thing with a CZChemDB template for soils. That would be kind of like version 1 of our system. The YODA file is this concept of us moving forward to a unified system that's based on the concepts of ODM2. We're gonna have I think maybe jump ahead to have a big ODM2 discussion at the very end. But the idea of a YODA file is that if you choose to share your data as a YODA file, there are some enhanced integration capabilities. Even if you don't have a local ODM2 instance, a YODA file will be ingested, parsed into an ODM2 database that will eventually allow integration. So that's the benefit of a YODA file. It's not necessarily the Excel template that's the main benefit. The Excel template is a means of generating a YODA file, but the YODA file is the archival sharing format that is supposed to be easy to read and write, and we realized too that what was generated by that Excel thing really was bad. Mm-hmm.
I just have a question. Who is currently using and distributing YODA files as a transfer format?
No one really right now. It's all experimental.
Because I think it's a great idea, but really in practice, and we can save this conversation for later if that's appropriate. It just, in my experience, there's not a huge incentive to spend a lot of time trying to get that to work as it is, using the tools available currently, which are pretty much just the templates. Unless you have high-level computer skills, and I mean like very high level. I'm not thinking anyone's going to use it. Because I realize, and it's hard.
We realize that we haven't yet provided the YODA file idea is, and I think we realize that also the section that describes it, we need to put in the interim while we're working on this. I think we need to have some updates here about how progress is going and basically what to do in the meanwhile. We realize that generating YODA files
it's so complicated.
It needs tools, and the tools that we have provided to you aren't great yet. But there are actually a whole family of tools that have been developed over the summer, but they're not.
Anthony, can I chime in just a little bit? I just want to say, to give context here, like the original CZO display file format worked really well for time series. We know that. But more importantly, what it did is it allowed us a mechanism for all of the CZOs to consistently contribute data, time series data, in a way that they could be harvested, they could be parsed into ODM databases, they could be hosted by SDSC, they could be registered with the Quasi Water Data Center, they could be searchable via Hydro Desktop, and so there was this huge chain of things that happened that opened up all sorts of possibilities because we agreed on the fact that we were going to do this whole CZO display file format. So that, I think, was a success, but it had its limitations, which is why we went down the path of ODM2 and YODA. And short of actually getting YODA to work and having a common exchange format for more complicated sample-based data, I don't think we'll achieve any sort of, well, I don't think we'll achieve the same sort of functionality that emerges from sample-based data sets that we now have for time series-based data sets, because we'll just basically get different stuff from every CZO, and it'll be sort of the wild, wild west. So while we understand that the tools are not there yet, that the YODA file still needs some work, I think we just have to step back and realize how important it is to actually put the effort in to try and make this work, because if it doesn't, I'm not sure there's an alternative out there right now.
Well,
I agree.
We do, oh, sorry. I just wanted to add, from the EarthChem perspective, we do have templates that we use at the moment and that we basically expose on the EarthChem library website to gather metadata. They're not as complete as, you know, ODM requires, but that's simply because it gets to be so complicated that nobody wants to fill out these forms. So that could be a start, and they could be eventually, you know, augmented or modified in a way that it better fits both the data manager needs and the ODM2 needs.
So we get the frustration.
Yep.
We realize that the tools that we have are not ready for grad students. We realize that grad students are our target audience.
That's grad students. I mean, the truth is my experience, and it sounds like I'm one of the only people that's really put in a genuine go. I'm one of the few. And,
you are one of the few.
And the truth is that given the complexity of what you guys have going on, and I totally conceptually get it, and I think it's a great idea, and I like what you've done, but the truth is without really simple tools and a good system of tech support, of just support and guidance, whether it be written materials or somebody who you can call or contact, and have that turnover time be a whole lot shorter than weeks to months. I mean, we're talking like hours to days. Then I think it work, but without that actual support, I just don't see it happening.
Yep.
And I would also like to say that I feel, you know, from the perspective of a new CZO, I mean, that, you know, Jeff made the point that, you know, they had the CZO data display files, and I mean, are the old CZOs using those old display files? Or are they trying to use these Excel spreadsheets, the specimen and the time series templates? Like, I mean, like, what are the new CZOs supposed to use, and what are the old CZOs using? And I mean, it's like, I mean, that's like really the frustration for me, is that, you know, you kind of left us without any, you know, I mean, what are we supposed to use? You know, and that's, I mean, I think a lot of the CZOs would like to be able to say, this is a common display format. You should have this, you know, fill out this template for data. You know, not, I mean, right now it feels like you're saying we can load any kind of data up on the DMS. So to me, that kind of says, okay, kind of the Wild West is, you know, anything kind of goes. And
so let me speak to that. First of all, the old CZOs are continuing to put CZO display file version 1 up because it was some of them are, because it was relatively easy for them to do. To avoid the Wild West, we had to come up with something better. There was no way to do it without something big and ambitious like ODM2. The data systems at AIDA, at Quasi, were creaking under the weight of expanded data use cases that their current data systems couldn't handle. The ODM2 effort, I can't even tell you how both monumental and how transformative it has been and will continue to be. So this YODA file thing has been super frustrating for you, I can tell. Forget about it for now. Just put it on the table. Share your data the way you can. It was probably premature for us to share those Excel templates with you. We appreciate the testing that Sue did. It was useful for us. We realize completely that it's got to be easy for it to work. We also know that without something like the YODA file, data integration and synthesis isn't going to happen. Nobody, with all the effort going into EarthCube and everything else, nobody's even close to the kind of data integration we want to do, with the exception of like Quasi for time series data and the Earth chemistry data that's already been put into you know, the EarthChem databases for a while. Like basically we chose Quasi and EarthChem because they were the closest to granular level data integration out of any of the data systems out there. But they had reached their limits, and so that's why they're all looking at ODM2 to move forward.
So you're saying, like, basically we should just, you know, right now abandon the YODA files, use EarthChem. I mean, I have students who are finishing up, so they need to load specimen files, you know, templates, and so I mean, I guess that's basically what you're saying is, you know, abandon ship, use EarthChem. I mean, that's really, you know, like we're the users, we're the, like, you know, we're trying to be compliant, and, you know, I really want to keep it as simple as possible. You know, we follow, you know, the YODA file because that's what we thought we were supposed to do. But, you know, we can, I mean, if you guys suggest like the EarthChem as the best model data templates, then we can go that direction.
So like off the wiki and no longer leverage that with anyone?
You can do.
That's my question. Is like, should we totally pull all of our references to YODA files and ODM2 compliant metadata and just go with one of these other mature repositories?
So, Kirsten, you want to answer that one? Kirsten may have stepped out.
Kristen, I think.
No, I was just muted. I was talking to my phone and not to
Sorry.
you. So that was me. I had muted because of background noise. I think we need to take into account that in the existing structures, we have to separate sample and time series data, and that's still, you know, so for the sample-based data, I think it works fine in the current EarthChem templates. But I want to make sure that it really works. So maybe, you know, it would be nice to actually sit down with you, go over the templates that we have right now, and see if there is anything missing, anything that these templates don't capture that you think is critical. They come primarily from rock and sediment geochemistry, especially from drill or sediment cores and individual specimens. So there might be, you know, aspects of the data you generated that are not easily accommodated. I don't know, but I think it would be worth just spending in a separate, you know, session for a half hour, spending some time to look at it and say, yes, this is okay. We do have quite a bit of CZO geochemistry in the system already, and, you know, Megan can probably better comment to that. So we can also look at those files and see that they work for you.
So unfortunately, with respect to Excel templates, we're not quite where you want to be. We're not telling you to abandon YODA files forever. We really hope to get you a template that's going to be brilliant and work great. And we hope we can get it to you soon, like on the level of, you know, a month or 2 or 3. We we kind of imagine that we'll probably have to have one more YODA workshop to really finalize the specification. In the meanwhile, I think, you know, Sue, it sounds like you've already deconstructed some of those Excel templates and turned off some of the, you know, turned off the macros and a few other things as a means to just harvest the metadata. As Sue, as you pointed out, the metadata is what is really hard to capture from these students as they're heading out the door. So capture the metadata using any of these if they work. You could use the CZChemDB file, the Excel template, if that works for you. We're going to try our hardest to move things into YODA files. If they go into one of these files, they will get ingested into EarthChemDB. That will happen, and they'll get integrated. We've already committed. We've already mapped and committed to take any old CZChemDB Excel templates and ingest them into EarthChemDB from there. So one of the things that can happen is that you can basically, you could even just have your grad student, you know, just hand you their Excel spreadsheets and make sure you get enough metadata using the system that it looks like you already have on your system. Create one of these data set listings, point toward those a bunch of those Excel files wherever they are in your server, or those instances where it's an Excel file plus a metadata header. And then when the YODA file thing is super mature and you want to use it so that you can get your data into an integrated system, then copy and paste the data into the Excel, into the YODA file template once there's one that's super easy and flawless.
Okay, so just for the immediate future then, if I'm hearing correctly, then specimen-based data sets should go into the EarthChem templates and time series and whatever Quasi is currently using, which I understand is not ODM1, but something else. Is that correct?
Let's continue the conversation a little bit, but Quasi doesn't actually, so we have created parsers that take the CZO display file 1 and basically load them into Quasi's HIS system. Quasi itself doesn't really accept those files. They accept data via web services.
Can I chime in a little bit?
Yeah.
This is Emilio again. When Mark or someone mentioned several minutes ago that Reynolds Creek data was already on the Quasi, accessible via the Quasi data center, water data center, I went in just to double check to figure out what it is we could work with. And I did find the Reynolds Creek data, and I can see that it's hosted, that the data set itself is hosted not by the water data center, but by some group in Idaho. And that all means that someone is running, Mark Cyprate's name is listed there as the contact person, but that all means that someone in Idaho is hosting an ODM1 database, most likely, and they have a Quasi-HIS Water One Flow web service on top of that, which makes it accessible to the water data center. So that's, I didn't know this, and that's both really promising, and it's also something that we should discuss how to connect to that from various points on our CZOData resources to that service, including the visualization data portal, but we'll get to that later today. Well,
just a quick question.
Yeah.
Okay, so we did that, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago.
Uh-huh.
So all those files that Stu showed you, or Katie showed you, have a 2015 date on them. I don't know what, I think probably it's 2012 or so that you have on the HydroLab. I don't know how that gets updated.
I think that topic, unless that mechanism or that effort to make data available via the quasi-HIS water one flow services, unless that project sort of went dead and no one has updated in years, it's worth focusing on that at some point, either today or later on, because that's a terrific thing you're already doing. It's worth noting that it's also a very unusual thing in the CZO data context. I don't mean unusual as bad, but just in terms of us not having handled something like that.
I feel like I should
go ahead.
mention Steve Van Vactor is the person that worked with Quasi to get ODM1 and everything up, and he had a bad experience with it. He's actually not supportive of an ODM implementation or going with YODA files.
That's independent of YODA files. I just want to make sure that that's...
I understand. I understand, but essentially the idea was that one of the main uses of a YODA file was to populate ODM2 databases, and they're supposed to work in concert.
But I do want to highlight this is pre-ODM2. All that effort that the water data center ingests, that precedes ODM2 or anything that we've been talking about.
Right.
I'm not saying that
that. I think he's abandoned that update cycle, and I'm sure he would. I don't want to speak for him, but I should feel like, you know, in his absence, to mention that that was something that was abandoned, and I'm not sure the exact reasons why, but Steve would probably be able to lend some insights to that.
It's also very good to know.
So, assistance with streaming data, which sounds like what we're talking about right now. You know, I mentioned that there are two of these optional things that we'll help with. One is a local ODM2 instance if you're interested, which you know, is completely your choice. The other one is with streaming data. You don't have, so there are lots of different ways to get data streaming via Water One Flow web services in a way that can be integrated by the Quasi Water Data Center. And here we provide detailed instructions. One of them is to establish a Quasi Hydro server. That Hydro server is old software, and it requires Microsoft and a bunch of other things. That's just one of the options. There are lots of other options, and we are very interested in working with you as individual CZOs for developing those other options. There are ways to have Water One Flow web services run on whatever custom data system you want. They're not really supported by Quasi, but we know how to do some of that stuff. We've experienced it. And then the last one is that we're actually building right now Water One Flow web services around ODM2, if that is something that you eventually want to try out. But I'm going to move back to vocabularies. Vocabularies are really important for integrating data. Right, we have spent a lot of time on vocabularies to get the right terms in the right places so that data can be integrated. It's super critical. All data systems need vocabularies. So we described here the benefits of vocabularies and then detailed instructions. And our first one is to look at the recommended control vocabulary systems list. There are a pile of recommended control vocabularies, or there are three major ones, but we've developed one around the observations data model too. I know that doesn't bring warm fuzzies to your heart probably to hear that. We're picking up on that message, but let me give a plug for this system. ODM2 control vocabularies don't require you to run ODM2 to use them. We worked with Quasi vocabularies, AIDA, EarthChem vocabularies, and a pile of other vocabularies from lots of other organizations, including NASA, to develop what we believe is the best of the best vocabularies for a whole pile of uses in earth and environmental sciences.
Anthony, just to say, I think you got a great system there for the vocabularies.
Super. Thank you.
We're totally sold on that. Perfect.
All right. Well, that actually helps. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. So I'll just say a couple last things here. Is that so we developed the best of the best. We put it on the system. The system is built around a SCOS, which allows machine-to-machine reading of these vocabularies. The vocabularies have definitions, including provenance. A lot of vocabulary systems don't. And lastly, it has the ability to contribute to the vocabulary list if you want to contribute to them. This really elevates where both quasi-vocabularies were and AIDA vocabularies. AIDA is working on a whole other set of vocabularies in a system that's similar to this right now. But for the CZOs, the ODM2 vocabularies are a great place to start. They have that benefit of machine-to-machine plus user community edits and suggestions for new vocabularies. We realize, however, that ODM2 vocabularies aren't always the best for everything. And by the way, the IGSN International Governance Committee adopted 2 of the ODM2 vocabularies as their official vocabularies. So, you know, there's a lot of interest in what we've done. For many instances, quasi-ODM 1.1 vocabularies are a good choice, and there are still several vocabularies within the EarthChem system that really are the best choice there. So there are yet other vocabularies. Yodophiles and ODM2 can use vocabularies from other systems, by the way, so you're not locked in, but these are our recommendations. IGSNs. You suggested an interest in using IGSNs. We describe on this page the benefits of IGSNs, and Megan Carter, who's on the phone, will be, you know, can help with getting IGSNs. One of the things about IGSNs, which is relatively new, is that the IGSN Governance Committee has decided to expand the use and role of IGSNs to describe a variety of sampling features, not just specimens that you take that are physical objects that you take away from a location on the Earth to analyze in a laboratory, but sampling features that are a physical location on the Earth, a point on the Earth in which you are making direct measurements of some Earth feature, such as the air, the soil, or you know, soil moisture. So you can have things like wells, boreholes, weather stations, all be given IGSNs because they're a place on the Earth where you're collecting data. The sensors that are on the weather station or the stream gauging station don't get IGSNs. The water or the air at that location on the Earth gets the IGSN. So under our instructions, we are making the recommendation that all CZO sampling sites get registered with IGSNs. The IGSN system has this whole hierarchical data relationships, so that any data that's collected at a station with an IGSN can get linked to that, and the IGSN itself can be used as a way to aggregate all the data from that. IGSNs are universally unique or globally unique identifiers for that site, for example, or for the specimen. So once you've created IGSNs for your sampling sites, use that sampling site IGSN in your workflow for managing your data from your sensors and specimens. We suggest using IGSNs very early on in your field and lab specimen collections, perhaps right, you know, when you're creating labels before you even collect the sample. When you go to, you know, the IGSN data system, which has a lot of components of ODM2 in it, and ODM2 fully supports managing that information. You actually get a barcode, this unique identifier. With that barcode, you can use a smartphone to pull up this web instance, basically a call out of the database that gives you all the information about that specimen. And this is searchable in the literature. It also includes where the parent, you know, such as the sampling site where this core got taken care from, all the other cores that came from that same sampling site or the siblings, and then any daughters, any subsample or children that came from that sampling core, for example. So there's a huge benefit for local data management in using IGSNs. And then the last one is actually in data publication, that if you actually cite an IGSN in a publication at Elsevier and other journals, it creates a system where you can actually do literature searches for all the data that were collected and published on that IGSN. And the literature searcher should be able to eventually look through the entire hierarchy of samples that are related to that. So there's an enormous amount of power there. Maybe Kirsten could mention some additional information, but we strongly urge that CZOs kind of follow this pattern.
Yeah, Anthony, I'd just like to add there are many benefits of using IGSNs that are not mentioned here. We know that you guys have started registering samples. I see that you have 80 IGSNs in CSAR, so we're very excited about that, and I'd be happy to help answer any questions that you have going forward.
I had one question about a couple. One is, so we have, let's say, a weir sitting in the stream. Are you saying that should have an IGSN?
The weir itself, it doesn't get an IGSN, but the sampling location of stream water at the weir, that's what gets an IGSN.
So then how does that get cited?
Well,
so
you just
say I have stream flow from some location. Is that right?
Right.
Okay.
The station where there's a weir. Right. The weir is a piece of equipment at that sampling location.
Okay. And then with these samples that we collect, let's say we collect a soil sample, we measure organic carbon or something else there, and then register it and get all this information. Then 3 years later, we say, oh, we should have checked. Let's check the mineralogy on this or some other measurement. How does that get incorporated?
Right. So
well, that's okay. Go ahead, Megan.
Go ahead.
Does that become a daughter or something?
The way I like to think of it is each time you take a separate physical portion of that sample and do an analysis on it, it should get an IGSN. That's a person you can.
So if you get a sample.
There's clearly a bit of a fuzzy zone. For example, you know, if you would compare it to a rock, you collect a rock and you do a whole rock analysis, and you just do microprobe data on the minerals, you would still leave it with one IGSN for the sample. But if you take this rock and there is a special inclusion in it, and you actually remove this inclusion and analyze it, then that would get its own IGSN and be linked as a child to that rock piece. So when you I'm not quite sure I'm fully knowledgeable of the type of samples you're taking, but let's say you have a bottle of water that you collected somewhere, and you generate a you filter it and do some particles from that water as a separate analysis, then I would give that a new IGSN and link it to that bottle of water that you collected somewhere and that has its own IGSN. But if you just analyze different types of data, different types of properties from that water bottle, let's say, you have your nitrogen first, and then a few years later you do a different organic carbon measurement or whatever on it, then they would both refer to the same IGSN, and that's actually the power that you basically stay with one identifier across all the analyses.
Okay.
So
cool.
Just to say one more thing. So I actually helped to register all of the Shale Hill soil samples prior to a couple years ago. And every time a split was taken of soil, for a new analysis, that got a new IGSN. I think that's the easiest way to think of it for soil. And as long as you correctly identify the parent, all of those linkages are made. You don't lose track.
Okay, so it has a different number, but it's also registered to that parent?
Yes, so you will say that give the parent IGSN when you register the child sample, and that will make the link for you.
Okay.
Is there any move, I mean, to have a library, a curation, a place where, you know, we can send samples to be archived, and is that a part of?
That would be a good thing to communicate to NSF, I think. This is one year. I'm actually running a research coordination network in EarthCube, focusing on the needs of samples. And there's the IGSN is sort of the digital world, but that doesn't work without an actual physical archive for the samples, and that is unfortunately something that has not been addressed. I wonder if, I'm actually interested to hear from somebody of the USDA if they have possible capabilities to archive soil samples from the CZOs or something, so that we can find solutions to archive at least those samples on which data have been acquired.
So Kirsten's the person.
Yeah, I'm not the right person to ask it.
I once heard that the USDA has a whole a big collection of soil samples somewhere.
In Lincoln, Nebraska.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yes,
exactly.
There is in Lincoln, Nebraska. Yes, it may be possible. I don't know. There is an archive of there.
Well,
otherwise, there is no facility, no repository at the moment for samples from the CZOs.
So while we're still talking about IGSNs, I wanted to say that I was aware that Reynolds was one of the CZOs that was working with EarthChem or with Kirsten's group to register IGSNs, but Megan mentioned over the duration of the call that there are 81 private IGSNs that have been registered but are currently kept as private or coded. If you are ready to go public with any of those, I would encourage you to do that. And in emails this morning with Megan and Kirsten, I learned that, meant to give you encouragement, I guess, I learned that Calhoun also had IGSN. So while we were talking in the last half hour, I went ahead and processed those, and they're now available on the viz.criticalzone.org. If you make public any of your, any subset or all of your 81 IGSNs, I can process them very quickly and have them be visible and public on the viz.criticalzone.org today, or soon after you make them available, basically, or public.
Where do you see those? Those are on that? How do you find those? I guess I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. How do you find which IGSNs that are registered with?
No, the visualization, I guess.
Oh, so this is what the ones I made public are for Calhoun. Not for Reynolds, because they are, I just learned that they are public. What Megan said and what I kind of confirmed yesterday was that Reynolds, you guys have registered 81 samples, but they're currently kept as private in the system, so I have no access to them, and it would be inappropriate, of course, to make them available via viz.criticalzone.org. So
yeah, we're just starting to try to register them to get them then.
Yeah, so whenever you're ready, just let me know, or Megan can let me know, and we can turn around and have them be exposed on viz.criticalzone.org very quickly.
Yeah, so I guess my question is, how do you see them exposed on the criticalzone.org? Where are they exposed?
I can point you to examples. I mean, obviously in Reynolds, I can't. There isn't anything. But if you go to Luquillo, the Luquillo app, or the Calhoun one, you can access them.
Can you share your screen, That's what
Anthony would have to. Oh, yeah, there you go.
Okay.
So if you click on the samples, you can see that. Sorry, someone was going to speak?
Oh, I mean, this is Kitty. I mean, I think, you know, one of our main issues on, you know, the visualization portal that Sue Parsons pointed out is just that, you know, we've sent you a bunch of layers, but, you know, they haven't been uploaded onto the visualization portal. So we, you know, just kind of.
Obviously, I wanted to address that. We're running out of time, though. Anthony,
why don't you go ahead and address that right now?
5 minutes? Okay. So sorry again for Miss Anthony.
I guess I want to talk about what we can do in the next 5 minutes. This time is a little bit tight. There are a couple. This conversation has been really dynamic and lots of interesting things to cover. I think Emilio does need to respond to this. I'd like to talk about data DOIs. That's really important. And I would like to talk about ODM2 in the software ecosystem because there was a comment made about how nothing's really happened with ODM2 software. And in fact, it's really quite the opposite. It's super impressive the amount of work that's been happening over the summer and spring, summer, and into the fall that is kind of underlying some of the work that will help the YODA file effort. So those are topics, and I don't know how we can cover them, if we need to schedule an extra one or if some of us can wait. You know, I could probably go an extra 20, 30 minutes at the most. Maybe some of us can, but right now,
let's say another 20 minutes too, by the way.
Okay.
If necessary.
Unfortunately, I've got another meeting, so I got to run.
I have visitors here. Steve Richard is here. Can't stay.
Say hi.
Yep, I will.
Right. In that case, if Emilio, well, how about the Reynolds Creek folks? Can you stay a bit longer or not?
You talking about DOIs?
To talk about DOIs, Viz, and ODM2.
Sure, I can stay.
Okay. Well, if Kirsten is about to leave and Jeff is about to leave,
I can stay for 5 minutes if that's the time, you know, required for the DOIs, but I can't stay for another 20, 25 minutes.
Okay. Then the data DOI, let me describe this. Sorry, Emilio, I'm going to just put you on the back burner a little bit. So the data DOIs are a way to basically archive a data set at a national data center and create a traceable link to it that's citable, just like a publication. And this is really increasing in its use, and it's actually recommended by publishers that, you know, instead of having a supplementary table, they don't really want to do that with data anymore. They want you to put it in an archival data center and have somebody else be responsible for maintaining that data table. And all they want to know is the DOI to that data table. So this is more and more recommended. It also, the CZOs don't have, you know, an archival mandate, but data centers do. So now your situation is a little bit different, and we should talk about that because you have the USDA archiving a lot of your data, but not all of it. We have a list of recommended data centers and repositories. So the idea is that, you know, you'd create one of these data set listing pages, like we were looking at, wherever that might be, like this precipitation one. And eventually, once you actually create a DOI for that data set, you'd add an extra line here that would point toward the repository where it's archived with the DOI. And that pointer would be persistent for, let's say, people to reuse that data set for a model run, right? So if you're publishing a model run based on precipitation data and you want it to be absolutely reused by somebody down the road, you want to lock it in, get a DOI, it's citable and repeatable, and point toward that. So there are 3 major data centers that we're working with for getting DOIs. EarthChem Library is one of them. HydroShare Water Data Center are 2 others that are beginning to offer DOI capabilities. And then there are these 2 for biology. The LTER network is now opening its doors to CZOs, and the Knowledge Network for Biocomplexity. Kirsten, do you want to add anything to that before you run about the use of DOIs and their benefits? Because this is something that I don't see at Reynolds Creek, and I think is a recommendation from us to you.
No, I mean, there's not much to add. I mean, I just came back from last week's meeting with publishers. It's an effort of publishers and data facilities to work together on these issues, and that's, I think, what Anthony pointed out. So the linking between DOIs of data and DOIs of publications is really being implemented at all the major journals now. And besides this real citability of data, pointing to a data set that is exactly the one and will forever be the one that underlies a specific publication, the data DOIs also will provide in the future, or starting to provide, the capability of building data citation indexes, sort of, you know, and actually tracking bibliometrics the same way, you know, the citation index has worked for publications before. So this is intended to augment the relevance of data sharing across the community. There are many other sort of things technically in the background going on that the DOIs for data will help with. It's linking up with unique identifiers for authors, ORCIDs. Many of you may have heard that. We're linking the data DOIs up with the IGSNs of the samples that are mentioned within a data set and so on, so that you know, you can do searches, you can basically build up bibliometrics for your samples and how often they have been mentioned in data sets and so on. So there's a whole environment or sort of ecosystem evolving of these unique identifiers. So it really becomes critical for the data to be identifiable, to be located easily at the right location, and to be citable.
Any questions or thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, Kitty, I'll say that, you know, we have actually been moving towards DOIs. I mean, one of the challenges that we've been facing is that, you know, we just can't find a place that we have these huge, you know, 45 terabyte data sets that we want to archive. And so we're starting to work with, so they're model outputs of, you know, basically the climate data it's fine resolution 10 rasterized data for 30 years at hourly time steps. So huge data sets. So we're actually starting to work with the LTAR, the National Agricultural Library, and Mark can speak more to this, but we're, you know, starting to work with them to archive that data and get DOIs through the ARS. So basically, we're starting to explore basically more of a partnership with the ARS to potentially, you know, submit our data to be kind of long-term stored at that National Agricultural Library. So it's all kind of
That is really great, and I would be very interested to make connections to that data repository as well, to make sure these repositories that are, you know, funded by other agencies are involved in this coalition for publishing data in the Earth and Space Sciences. So if anybody knows somebody, I mean, you're obviously working with the people of this archive, I would be very, very interested to get a contact there.
All right. Well, that's great news. And these are our recommended data centers, but if there's a more appropriate one, we are, you know, a data center that issues a DOI, especially one that's very aligned with the, you know, either the funding agency or the data types are really always the best ones to choose. So that's great news.
I mean, you know, from my perspective as the PI, I just don't, you know, this ARS, you know, the Reynolds Creek Experimental Watershed through the ARS has been around for over 50 years, and
that's right.
you know, we'll see if the CZOs are going to be around for, you know, 10 years. So, you know, at the end of the day, you know, I'm basically suggesting that we have the data come full circle and end up back at the ARS, so it's a long-term legacy data set.
Absolutely, that makes sense. And that's the whole point of this whole recommendation, right? Is the long-term legacy data. The CZOs are currently holding on to most of their data themselves. Your team's a bit of an exception, so we want to get them into places that have long-term mandates to hold on to data. So AIDA already has that. Quasi-HydroShare and Quasi-Water Data Center are building that. There are benefits from these recommended repositories, and that is that data integration piece that we described, kind of based on ODM 1 right now for time series, and soon ODM 2. But we won't continue that too much more. I don't know if Jeff is still on the line. Oh, he had to leave. With that said, why don't we jump back? Kirsten has to leave. I want to make sure that we let Emilio talk about the Viz system. And then I would like to talk a little bit about the ODM2 ecosystem, just a tiny bit, to kind of maybe describe where that's heading and why we feel so confident about some things. Emilio, do you want to talk about Viz?
So thanks, everybody. Great conversation. I hope to hear more soon. Bye.
Bye, Kirsten. Thanks.
Anthony,
Emilio,
why don't you start with like a minute of background on the scope of Viz? Because ultimately, I think that's at the core of frustrations and misunderstandings about what Viz is supposed to do and not do.
Yeah, actually,
I'll take it from there.
That sounds great. So this data visualization portal that we have here was thrown in at the very last minute into the proposal that was written in 2011 as a demonstration of what you get when you have integrated data. It was never designed to visualize all the data that CZOs are using. It was actually originally designed to only visualize data that was in a quasi that was available as a quasi web service. Because it was a demonstration of how web services could be displayed in a map-based and searchable user interface, when the IGSNs developed a web service interface, Emilio decided to demonstrate the ability to ingest and display IGSN information and search IGSN information. So that was the idea. It was basically to show this is what you can get when you share data at this really granular integrated way, using IGSNs, using EarthChemDB, using quasi-HydroShare HIS system, and then eventually using ODM2 systems. So that's basically the point of the visualization portal. Now there are many other visualization portals that are out there. The capabilities that we have here are sometimes matched by other visualization portals. The more the merrier, frankly. But the idea is to really just show what's possible and to kind of be a little bit of an appetizer to whet the appetite for taking that little bit of extra effort to developing these integrated means for sharing data.
Thank you, Anthony. First of all, I just wanted to say that I'm sorry that about the frustrations that you run into. I think this partly has to do with the fact that you're a new CZO, and there are things that we may have assumed, or maybe in communications, it might have been implicit, but obviously that wasn't clear. In terms of the GIS layers that Sue sent to me, that was back in late fall, and the intent of my request was only focused on boundary layers, as you see where Anthony is focusing on right now. You see the outer boundary of that of the Reynolds Creek CZO, and that was again from what Sue sent me. Any layers that you may have sent me that included sites were not part of what I intended to request. All sites that are in the visualization portal are really coming from two sources. And again, as Anthony mentioned, that the goal of this application is to integrate web services and present them that are following standardized protocols, and that way leveraging the effort that people put into populating, sending data to, for example, via Quashi mechanisms or IGSNs, and provide an easy-to-use access to those web services. So if you go to so right now you don't see any sites in the Reynolds Creek app because there are no, in the case of time series, there are no Reynolds Creek associated data in the Quashi CZO Central holdings. And there are no IGSNs also on this app because there are no public IGSNs on the on Kirsten's holdings right now. If you go to another example, and Anthony, can you go to Lukio? That's a good.
But Emilio, we
go
sent
ahead.
you like a year and a half ago or a year ago.
It's a year ago, yeah.
Yeah, she sent you a ton of layers to be able to incorporate into the visualization portal. Why wasn't that done?
Because that's what Amelia just explained. That's not the intent.
The request I sent out was for GIS layers for boundaries, for two kinds of boundaries: regions, the outer boundary of the CZO, and regions within that CZO.
I said regions as well.
I don't remember seeing them. I can look back, but either it wasn't clear in your email what the region should be, but I can add them. I can go back to that and add them. But if you look at Lukio, Anthony, can you click on map layers on the left? You see that there's two kinds of layers out there, the outer boundary and the regions or field areas. And again, there's some customization that can go into each app or each CZO, but the intent here is to have a consistent presentation across all CZOs. So initially, that's why we had that more limited set of layers available, or GIS layers.
So
I just wanted to probably point out, it'd probably be helpful if you just talk about why it's kind of not viable or sustainable to like have the visualization portal be the place for people to, send stuff to you for, all the various layers and shape files and so on.
Thank you, David. Before going to that point, I also wanted to address the point made earlier about not being able to, for data managers or CZOs individually, not being able to edit their own data holds directly. And that goes back to what Anthony and I have mentioned, that that was never in the scope of this application. The intent here was to integrate data that was held or pushed to data holdings that are common across CZOs and that use common protocols like the Quashi HIS Water One Flow or the IGSNs. In the case of map layers, as Anthony didn't get around to talking about the description of GIS layers or geospatial layers in the data submit pages in the CZO data portal, but GIS layers were not, or GIS data in general, were not at the core of or the overall CZO data project scope initially, and as a result, right now we don't have the cleanest mechanism yet for providing a central repository or central mechanism to send data in a consistent way, GIS data in a consistent way, and have it be available everywhere like we do with other kinds of data in the search, available in the search criticalzone.org and then in the visualization portal. As a result, when I sent out that request a year ago, the goal was much more limited. because I knew I was going to get individual GIS files in all sorts of formats and structures. So the request was for something consistent across CZOs and limited in scope, which is, again, the CZO boundary and region boundaries. Anything beyond that will require more discussions within our team to be able to handle GIS layers in a more consistent way and ways that can be leveraged across the team components.
So can we work with you to get, like, for example, we have all of our stream sites that are on the criticalzone.org sites and the precip data sites. I mean, those could all go as fixed weather stations and stream sites and stuff like that.
Right now, we're only set up to those sites that you see there. And Anthony, while we are talking, can you click on just on any of the sites that have a red dot, just to be able to pop up one of the time series? Not that one. One of these.
Not that sites. One of the other ones, huh?
Because they'll have more data.
Kitty, this too. We can do that, kind of like how Steve did it, but include all of the other GIS layers. We would just need to use like our ArcGIS Online. But I mean, I would like to play nice and make sure that we can contribute to whatever they're doing. But if that's something that you really want and need, we can do it in ArcGIS Online.
I want to address that, though. Again, you're a new CZO, and that creates, and you have this Reynolds Creek system or water one flow data service that it appears to work even if it's not being updated. And that's what I pointed to and that I found on the Kawashi Hydro client. The original intent and the original approach that the CZOData project was taking when it was funded was to bring data in from the different CZOs via that old display file one format for time series. And those were going to be, so each CZO was going to, and this is just background, I'm not suggesting you do this, each CZO was going to submit those text display files, and then there is an automated mechanism that is still running that ingests those data files and into an ODM1 database at San Diego, and then puts water one flow services on top of those. That makes them available to the Water Data Center. You can go to the Hydro client at data.kawashi.org and find them. But it also makes them available from a single source and in a single data encoding and data request protocol that is also standards compliant for the visualization portal to ingest. So all the time series sites that we can present on the data visualization portal at this time only come from that mechanism, and currently they only come from the San Diego Water One Flow web services. Anthony is pointing to one in Luquillo, and obviously Luquillo is one of the older CZOs. It is possible, and I'm willing to explore this, that we could try to ingest the Reynolds Creek Water One Flow. There may be some kinks, but I think it's worth exploring. I mean, my only concern would be if it's really been abandoned or not supported anymore. In that case, I'm not sure that it'd be worth pursuing. But that would get you, I checked on that web service, by the way, and I saw that there were 136 sites with 4 variables and about 25 million individual values. If we went that route, and that there were no major obstacles along the way, that would get all those 136 sites shown on the Reynolds Creek app in the visualization portal. Right now, we don't have any other mechanism, though, to show sites that are time series sites that is not a water one flow service, because again, that was what NSF funded us to do.
So, does that make any sense? I think that this is one of the really classic examples of maybe miscommunication, misunderstanding about what the scope of this project is and what the purpose of this visualization portal is, and what it's supposed to show. And it's clear actually right now, as I'm listening to this, realizing that, gee, we need to rewrite the online documentation yet again on this to describe what it's not supposed to be doing. It's not supposed to be a visualization system for all your GIS data. That's never the intent. It's supposed to show integrated data that is being made available via web services. That's what it's supposed to show.
And also present a common view, if you will, across CZOs, so that when you go from one CZO to the other, the way data is presented and classified should be identical.
Sure, I understand. So it seems like it's a pretty limited use scenario, and I imagine Steve still has all of his scripts, but I think as far as describing or filling out the idea of whether or not, we're going to move forward with the quasi thing, that's really a question for Steve and for Mark, because they would be populating that database. Yeah. Any spatial layers, anything like that, you basically have our GIS server link, so you can just harvest that at any time you want. I can send that again.
I have the file geodatabase that you send me, and I'll send you an email so that you can point me to the region layers, and I can work on getting that online. Anything beyond that at this time, we just don't have the resources, and we're not set up to ingest ArcGIS Online or any other GIS web services, because again, that was not part of the scope.
Is there a way that I was just wondering, just because there's a lot of other types of data and data layers and things like that, and if we wanted to have a consistent place for it to be found and downloaded and accessed and seen, et cetera, is there a way that we could embed a map that does have that capability in this portal?
Not at this time, but I think one of the goals, as Anthony mentioned early on when we started the call, one of the goals for this call is to start getting input on where we should head in the future. Our funding is winding down. It ends in March. We're already on an extended period. I think it's pretty clear from different groups that adding more GIS capabilities is definitely, or GIS layer capabilities, is definitely something that people are interested in. So I would frame it in those terms, that while it's not something that we can add in the near future or within this funding period, it'd be great to have that conversation about what we should be doing in the future. In terms of, before we leave though, in terms of the Reynolds Creek time series data, and that's currently available via Water One Flow, if we decide to, I think it's worth having a follow-up call, and I'd be more than happy to be part of that. In terms of the work that would be involved in ingesting them or getting them into the visualization portal, it's really all on my end. So don't worry about that. Unless the data are somehow a mess, if everything is as expected, I would just be asking you or Steve a few questions, but all the work is on my end. But the broader question is whether that's a resource that has been abandoned. If it has been abandoned and there's no more effort to maintain it, I would be reluctant to invest the effort right now if there is a risk that it might go away tomorrow, for example.
Yeah, and I guess, I mean, from my perspective, I guess I would just ask, how useful, or how much more investment are we going to make in that visualization tool on the criticalzone.org, because it seems like it's, in some ways it's a very limited, it's still very limited in its, I mean, there's a lot more data out there, but it's just not really being able to be visualized because of, it's not, whether it's not loaded up to Kawazi or it's, it's not registered as, so I think that.
So it's all about data integration, right? Our job is about helping the CZOs integrate data between the CZOs. That's the role of the Integrated National CZO Data Project. So even though you have a great system and all these great files, they're not integrated with the other CZOs. And we're basically saying to get them integrated, you have to do these steps, right?
So, so what are those steps? I mean,
the steps are the ones we just talked about. They're the steps to basically get hydrological and other time series data into the quasi-HIS infrastructure, and to get geochemical and other data into AIDA EarthChem's data systems, and which are being all upgraded to ODM2 so that they can all essentially be the same system.
So we would need to continue with the ODM1 in quasi, right?
So
yeah,
yes
so
and no.
I think that's
Emilio correctly. So he's going to investigate whether he said whether the effort has been abandoned. You mean at the quasi end? Is that right?
No, I mean on your end. If you are no longer committed to that, and not just not updating data, but that essentially you consider it something that you're not maintaining anymore, I would be extremely.
So by maintaining, you mean updating or what?
Updating, ensuring, like adding new data. It doesn't have to be up-to-date data. It could be a 6 month back or whatever is appropriate.
Right. So we
committed to making sure. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So this kind of the question I had earlier was that the updating seemed to be problematic. I mean, we went to a lot of effort to get it in there, and then we go to next year, and it looked like. I mean, we could do it, but it wasn't clear, like who's using the data or anything. But if there's a reason, I think we could do that. But
again, I think it would be
first step is to see if you can. So the first step is to see if you can ingest it, right?
I know I can ingest it in general. There will be some kinks that would only come out once I start looking into it.
Yeah.
But again, if you were not committed, to continue that supporting that service. So for example, if something broke on that server tomorrow because the hard disk died, if I were you and I maintain servers and I'm not committed to that service, then I wouldn't put any priority on bringing it back. That's the kind of commitment I was alluding to. So it's both updating data, and again, it doesn't have to be anywhere near real time. It could have a substantial lag as long as you're doing it semi-regularly, and you're committed to maintaining the service. Then that's my green flag to go ahead and explore it. And I can go into reasons why it's a good idea, as long as it's not a huge time commitment for you to maintain that service. I can mention reasons why it's a good idea, and not just for the CZO data, but for making the data available widely to a wide community. Getting
well, maybe
go ahead.
So I should. Unfortunately, Steve isn't here right now, but we should talk to you in a different context and
let's follow up and set up a call in the near future.
Yeah. I mean, we're maintaining the data, and we put it all in there before, so it's doable.
Mm-hmm. And I'll point out yet again, Mark, that if you go to this, streaming data page, what you're doing option 1 here, or you did option 1. You established a local instance of a quasi-Hydra server using the Microsoft-based Hydra server software stack. That's option 1. If you really didn't like that, then there are 3 other options. So there are other ways to do it, and maybe some of these other options might be more appealing to you moving forward.
We don't know what the frustrations were specifically, and it might be that trying to shift to another quasi-water one flow ODM1 mechanism could be just as much work as doing something different that might be ODM2 based, et cetera. So I'll hold off until we have this conversation. This follow-up call.
Exactly. So why don't we help?
There were issues with that Microsoft. We didn't have that software. We had to go over to BSU to use it and stuff.
Okay.
But there are just several things.
Yeah.
So let's take that as our to-do list for one of the things to follow up on. It sounds like that would be a really useful thing to follow up on.
I think so. And again, if it turns out that the service is working and there is a mechanism to maintain the data and maintain the service, that would be a fantastic way to get the 136 sites that are listed there somewhat soon. Again, I would have to look into it more closely into that visualization portal. And it's outside of how we were structured initially, which was to get data from the San Diego Supercomputer Center from their quasi-water one flow services. But because it is also quasi-water one flow, I'm pretty optimistic that we can do this.
All right, it's been 2.5 hours. I really appreciate everyone's persistence on this. I'm going to just say one last thing about ODM2, because it sounds like you were considering implementing it. ODM2, if you go to odm2.org or GitHub ODM2 organization, you'll see that there's a whole software ecosystem that's been really massively expanding. You can look and see how recently all these libraries have been updated. There's an enormous amount of effort on the ODM2 software ecosystem. The ODM2 conceptual model, which is described here, has been stable for about 1.5 years. And the next effort was building a Python API, which allows you to write programs to work in and out of ODM2 databases. ODM2 can be installed in any software stack if you do want to run an ODM2 database. There are scripts to creating blank ODM2 databases, and there are scripts for converting from an ODM1 database to an ODM2 database. So all that can be automated. And there's actually a substantial amount of documentation, if you follow these links down here, about both ODM2 conceptually as an information model and also ODM2 as a database instance. What is now really quite solidified is this Python programming interface, application programming interface that basically enables a whole host of other software services. Kind of maybe the most exciting one is ODM tools for Python, which is something that started that has a long history actually, and just recently got updated for ODM2. So this is ODM2 tools, and this is basically a graphical user interface for doing management of time series data. So, you know, to do drift corrections and things like that. It's a really nice tool. It works very well. It's a graphical user interface, drag and drop, click and point, and that now runs on ODM2 through this ODM2 Python API. We've got a streaming data loader to get data in. We've got, and then right now we're actively working on web services to get basically the data out of an ODM2 database into the quasi ecosystem using this Water One Flow web service set of libraries.
So Anthony, is there going to be a webinar or a set of seminars, something like that, where these tools and workflows are showcased, like in a real application? So
what we've been doing is that, you know, we have spent an insane number of hours on these consults. Well, we did this, you know, new documentation, now the consults, and from these we're getting all these ideas about what to do focused webinars on. How to implement ODM2 locally is clearly a winner. We already have, there are already like 3 or 4 CZOs that are committed to implementing ODM2. Lucio essentially already has, and they're starting to contribute to the software ecosystem with this great graphical user interface for managing ODM2. It's really slick. It's actually even loading data into ODM2. And we talked about web forms for loading data into ODM2. Miguel Leon at Lucio has basically already done that, and we need to share that with the rest of you. He's created something on top of the ODM2 API. It's awesome. So we definitely want to share that. One of the things that's delayed our whole Excel template thing is that we realized we had to create a whole software library for ODM YODA tools. We tried to put all this validation and parsing and other stuff in these macros in Excel, and as you know, Sue, the macros just completely choked. So one of the reasons why we kind of put that on the shelf a little bit, and I apologize again for not communicating that, is that we're building on top of the ODM2 API for Python, we're building YODA tools on top of that, which would basically be a whole bunch of validation, loading things in and out of databases, generating YODA files in and out of ODM2, validating them against the ODM2 control vocabularies, making sure that the YODA file is a valid YODA file. So our idea is, remove all those macros out of the template, have someone fill out the template, and then submit the template to us. We run either via web form in an automated way would be the ideal way, just load it up to a website. And then the ODM tools would basically run, validate, parse it into an ODM2 database, and basically say, great, your template produced a valid YODA file. Here it is, and it's been uploaded into CZO Central, and is and maybe even a link to EarthChem database, the EarthChem library. That's kind of where we're going with this. So
should I spend any time looking at these, or are they all still in development?
It's an ecosystem in which some things are super stable right here. I mean, these updates are probably very minor tweaks and improvements. This is very stable now. So there's a whole software ecosystem that's being built upon them. I think ODM tools for Python is actually quite stable. The YODA tools is actually still work in progress. Same thing with Water One Flow Web Services. Emilio might know more about how that's progressing if he's still on the line. There are different moving parts, and unfortunately, we haven't yet gotten to a point of having a stable release of the entire software ecosystem. But early adopters.
That would be some feedback I would give. I mean, I guess that would be some feedback I would give because, in my particular case, like the CZO isn't my only thing that I have to focus on. So if you showcase or you direct people to a bunch of immature, basically systems, tools, schema, etc., and they invest a lot of time and effort on something that doesn't work, they lose confidence in that as a viable option. So, I mean, and that's certainly what happened in my case, is like, spending a lot of time on something that just simply wasn't mature. I was like, well, this doesn't work. So I would be really hesitant, or perhaps flag your resources saying, this is something I want you to actually look at. This is something that's very much still in development and may not work.
Yeah. It's clear that that's what we need to do next. So hopefully these submit data pages carry that ball down the road quite a bit. We realize that regarding YODA files, we probably need to put in some more caveats and descriptions. Regarding ODM2, we clearly, on both of those, we need to have very specific webinars about those two things. But, call up or contact Miguel Leon and also Mate Dursik from Arizona. They're moving down the road to implementing ODM2. Miguel basically has already done it. So, so hopefully we can create an active user group for these things too. Because frankly, software support is not what we have any funding for, and that's a problem. That's one of the things for maybe the next phase of CZO funding is support money. We could hire with resources. We could hire a full-time support person for CZOs that could just answer calls and that kind of stuff, but we don't have that now.
I feel like it would be more, cost-effective just to stand up an ODM2 database on your end and manage these systems and just have people submit data through a web interface. Wouldn't that be cheaper, just to manage it on your end?
Well, that's what we're doing. So the AIDA EarthChem database is an ODM2 database that we're managing, that AIDA is managing. The central catalog for CZO data is built around ODM. Is being moved over to ODM2. So, but but we still need people to submit data in a form that we can read. And so all of our efforts have been, we don't have the funding to actually build a central ODM2 database and take anyone's data in any format that they have and kind of cram it in there. So we're building tools to help you all.
But yeah, like a web interface. So basically it's pretty straightforward because, let's face it, if you make it really easy and you spoon feed people, they're probably much more likely to do it. But kind of like what I showed with the NKN, you could just have a web-based form where people are submitting, cut and paste all the metadata elements and their formatted data set, and then boom, you've got it, and you've got, you know, all your parsers and whatever else you need on your back end. Done deal.
Yep, that's where we're headed. That's what we want to do. We didn't, you know, just to be really clear, we didn't get any funding for any of that stuff. Like, really what we had funding for was for people to load data up in, you know, in these kind of data set listings using CZO display files that then got ingested into Quasi, and CZChemDB files, which got ingested into EarthChem. And that was kind of, but we decided to take the opportunities to try to explore ways that really could do real integration, and that's what we're doing. But I mean, it's pretty clear to us that releasing those YODA file templates, even though they were prototypes, I mean, I'm just going to point out these Excel templates, there's not a single one listed there under Excel templates. They're all prototypes. And I thought we made that super clear that these were, we wanted just some feedback on these things. You know, doing that prematurely generated some bad will. So we're trying to overcome that bad will. Give Miguel Leon a call. He's really excited about ODM2 for what it can do for him locally. You guys already have a system, so maybe you don't want ODM2. That's not, we're not trying to push ODM2 on you for local data management.
I set up an SQL ODM2 database, and I was working on some templates to ingest data into it when I was told to stop and use the YODA file. So I abandoned that effort in favor of working with the YODA files, but now I realize that that will also be abandoned. So I guess from my perspective, and it sounds like Miguel pursued that.
We're not abandoning the YODA file effort. We have learned from our mistakes to not promise something until it's ready.
Right.
And
so
it wasn't ready when we were basically saying, hey, you know, we feel good about this. Why don't you try it out? It's a prototype. That didn't work for us, so we're not going to promise that anymore. We're going to just continue to work forward, and when it's ready, it's ready. So what we're saying is that, you know, we realize that all of you have to move forward. There are tons of mechanisms to move forward that we're describing. Move forward with what's available right now. And
right. And I think that that's really kind of the take-home message that, I mean, and also in my conversations with Steve Van Wagner, who went through the whole ODM1 exercise, and I won't say any more about that. I'll let him speak for himself. But I guess just from my perspective and just, you know, trying to move forward with what we need a system that works right now. We don't need it a year from now. We need that now. And given that that's our situation, I think, you know, it makes, and what I'm hearing is we're going to use, you know, EarthChem for our sample-based data, and if it's the kind of thing where your group can work with EarthChem to make sure that whatever I submit to them, you also can ingest, that would be fantastic. And if Steve is willing to revisit his ODM1 work, you know, we can certainly try to work with that. I mean, that seems like a better, you know, a lower hanging fruit in a way, but yeah, it's just, yeah, I would be really careful to offer up stuff that doesn't work yet. And I'm not talking about just the YODA files, like templates, but also a lot of these tools and stuff. If they are if they're in development, I would certainly try to reflect that, because just when you're coming at it and you have limited time and you're wasting a lot of time on something that's really not going to work, it's probably going to change anyway, that's very frustrating, and you feel as though you've wasted a lot of time that could have been better used implementing something that will work for you.
All right. I think our team has heard that message loud and clear, and well, again, we regret that we set you up for frustration, I guess, with those Excel templates.
Well, I don't think it's just the ODM2 thing either. It's like the CZO data visualization portal. I understand now that it's a very limited use case scenario. It's meant to display quasi data that's in a, and stuff that has IGSNs. But that's not really how it was leveraged either at the meetings and et cetera. It was more like, hey, here's your data viz portal. It's sort of like, the laundry basket of geospatial visualization stuff, and that's really not what it is. And I understand that now, and I understand the desire and the need and appropriateness of having, that standardized data formats on the back end of it so that everybody has their integrated data. But again, I think that's not really, this is more like a quasi-data visualization portal.
Well, quasi doesn't have anything to do with IGSNs.
Or, sorry, CESAR and quasi's data visualization portal.
Yep. It's designed, so I will state again, as I mentioned to Kitty, this project was proposed in 2011 to help the CZOs integrate their data. We were explicitly told, don't mess with the management of data at individual CZOs is outside of the scope of this project. The CZO PIs kind of made that, the early ones made it super clear to us that they didn't want that, NSF didn't want that. So our role is to integrate data. So what we're trying to show is frankly, what, everything we're doing is trying to work toward integrating data. So the visualization system only displays the data that's been fully integrated. And this whole focus on ODM2 and YODA files is about the pathway to full-on data integration.
So, Anthony, I need to go, but I just wanted to thank you for your time and everybody's time, today. And I just need to go to the next meeting. And
yeah, we need to wind up. We've gone for quite a long time. Thank you for this marathon.
Yeah, but, I appreciate your time, and hopefully, we're not, I think that this helped with definitely clarification. I mean, I think as a new CZO, the expectations of the CZO data are they're not, like, our expectations are not, we're not necessarily aligned. I mean, we were really told, don't work on your data management tool because that's what the CZ data is going to do. And so there was, I think, also just miscommunications early in the, beginning of it all. But I appreciate your efforts to communicate more and resolve, help us move forward. So that's great.
All right, yeah. So, yeah, let's try to maintain the communication from this. This was really a useful conversation, and we've had a whole series of useful conversations. So we'll continue.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for Gideon.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.